have any comment on the FEC violation filed against your office?
There is no violation, so there's no violation found.
Do you think that's a sign of you taking dark money?
Oh, no.
Maybe. That was brand new reaction from Alexandria Ocasio Cortez to a potential bombshell complaint filed with the Federal Election Commission against the freshman Democrat and her chief of staff. The allegations, being lodged by the conservative National Legal and Policy Center, claim the Congresswoman and her top staffer improperly funneled nearly $900,000 in campaign contributions from political action committees to private companies. Peter Ducey is live on Capitol Hill with the latest. It sounds ominous, Peter.
Kennedy, the reason for the red flags here is because when all that money moved around between accounts that were controlled by Alexandria Ocasio Cortez's chief of staff, it was all just labeled for strategic consulting. And the chief himself explained all this on national TV 3 years ago.
Our idea really is to run this single unified presidential style campaign that's going to look a lot like the Bernie Sanders campaign and use that model of, a single website for fundraising, a single like a giant national movement of volunteers contacting millions of voters.
But that might have been too broad because the law says specific payments need to be labeled specifically. So what comes next could be a big test for the freshman Congresswoman, who is very enthusiastic about other people's financial records, telling the New Yorker recently, "I can see Trump being enormously upset that a 29-year-old Latina who is the daughter of a domestic worker is helping to build the case to get his financial records." I think that adds insult to injury to him. The Federal Elections Commission complaint was lodged by the Virginia-based National Legal and Policy Center, where an official explains these are not minor or technical violations. We are talking about real money here. In all my years of studying FEC reports, I've never seen a more ambitious operation to circumvent reporting requirements. Representative Ocasio-Cortez has been quite vocal in condemning so-called dark money, but her own campaign went to great lengths to avoid the sunlight of disclosure. And you might have noticed in that soundbite that played during the introduction, the Congresswoman was coming back at the airport, which was surprising to us because air travel is one of the things that gets phased out over time in the Green New Deal that she supports. Our crew asked her why she flew and didn't take the Amtrak train from New York down to Washington, D.C. She said because it saved a couple hours of her constituents' time. Kennedy?
We all know that's not true, Peter. It's much faster taking Via Sella. Peter Ducey, thank you very much for that. Very good. So, Maria, we'll start with you.
Yes,
Let's talk a little bit about this dark money, because that's one of the new phrases in politics that people who want to see authentic and ethical campaigns want to get the dark money out of politics. But this money is not looking
so we
very light.
We should point out that the organization that filed the complaint with the FEC does have a political leaning. It is a conservative organization, so that they're very upfront about that.
Absolutely.
The FEC will look into these allegations, and we'll see what comes from it. The question of dark money is a good one. I worked on the 2012 campaign where we had conversations about super PACs, for example, and we very much wanted all of the donations for people to know them, but how you interact as an organization with super PACs, this has all changed a lot in the last 10 years. And one of the things, just to look at 2020, Elizabeth Warren, for example, talking about she wants no dark money, she wants everything out in the open. There will be a question about this issue for all of the Democratic candidates for that exact reason, Kennedy. Setting aside legal or statutory issues, there's a question about how Democrats want to run their campaigns and whether they want their donors and donations to be public.
Yes. I just want to clarify for the audience in case they didn't get what was happening here. So this is her chief of staff, who himself is a financial whiz and a multimillionaire. He created a PAC and had people donate money into it. And then that was his PAC. And then he shifted the money into an LLC that he also controlled. And Fox has, gone back and backed up these facts and looked for where these places were incorporated, et cetera. The reason why that looks suspicious is because the same rules don't govern an LLC for disclosure
the way they do
as a PAC.
Yes.
Right. So then when it goes into the LLC, it becomes much less transparent. So where did this money come from? What was it used for? Did they go over the limit for what was allowed with the campaign? And who got the money?
How is that not money laundering, though?
Well, we don't
the
know.
tax look that an LLC gets is very different than a PAC.
Right, over $200. You have to declare expenditures over $200, which is way over. This is $885,000. It was the Congress PAC and Justice Democrat PAC that went into something called a brand new Congress LLC. And the question that you might bring up is, okay, I gave $10, I gave $15, I gave it to see that she's elected and supported. I didn't give it to put it into an LLC. So how do people feel who donated to the campaign that it ends up in something that we don't know where it's heading, let alone the illegality of it?
Well, we don't know the legal issues of it. There's been a complaint filed by a conservative group, and it'll be looked into. This is all part of the post-Citizens United. You know, a lot of people, especially on the right, have been pushing for taking down some of the campaign finance regulatory things that have been put in place over many years. They want some of these regulations gone. So
But
this is just
a violation of a 1971
we don't know.
federal election law.
That's the accusation.
That's the allegation, yes.
So, but this is the world we're living in, post-Citizens United, where there's more dark money in politics. It's easier to give more dark money. It's a problem across the board, setting aside the legal issues.
I just want to ask the question, you know, if you're going to go through the trouble of setting up these two entities to shift money from one to the other, and you control both, it's hard to say that that's not for suspicious or bad reason. Why wouldn't you just spend it out of the first one?
Do you have evidence of that?
Why would you do it?
It's limited liability. You can't sue a corporation like that.
For the reason that Brian gave,
well, why would you
we
do
just publicly want to know why that is. Because some people gave their money under the understanding that it was going for one thing, strategic whatever, and then it may have, and that's why you look into it. It may have migrated or been forcefully put into another place, and you just want to ask the question for the very reason that you gave.
Just like the House Democrats are just asking the questions
and
to get all these answers.
But what happens is when you
we all agreed Mueller was going to get some answers. I'm just saying.
Let's not go back to that.
But don't you think when you open up and attack people on finances and by saying no planes and no cows, and you caught eating meat and flying on planes and having meat on planes, there's a problem.
But we don't know what
plane itself may have been made out of meat, Brian.
We don't know
This story is about her.
Lady Gaga's dress was once.
That's absolutely right.
This story is more about her than it is. I mean, there's just an obsession with her.
Everything about her.
And so,
Every
and so
single
her
thing is about her. Instead of the president's finances, like, and the president doesn't like that a 29-year-old daughter of a domestic worker is looking at his finances. It's like, come on, man.
Her opponents make it all about her, too.